Cincinnati, often nicknamed Cincy, is a city in Hamilton County, Ohio, and serves as the county seat. Founded in 1788, it sits at the northern edge of the confluence of the Licking and Ohio rivers, with the Ohio River marking the state line with Kentucky. Today, Cincinnati is the third most populous city in Ohio, home to more than 309,000 people according to the 2020 census. It also anchors the Cincinnati metropolitan area, the most populated metro region in Ohio and the 30th largest in the United States, with over 2.3 million residents. This makes Cincinnati not only a hub for culture and business in the Midwest, but also a central player in the story of Ohio's development. Etymology. Just 2 years after its founding, the settlement originally known as Lasanteville was renamed Cincinnati. The change came from Arthur St. Clair, governor of the Northwest Territory, likely at the suggestion of surveyor Israel Ludlow. St. Clair was also president of the Society of the Cincinnati, an organization of officers from the Continental Army who had fought in the American Revolutionary War. The society itself was named in honor of Lucius Quinctius Cincinnatus, a Roman statesman who became a symbol of civic virtue when he famously gave up absolute power to return to his farm. Cincinnati's name therefore carries a legacy of patriotism, sacrifice, and service to the greater good. Early history. From its earliest days, Cincinnati played a critical role in the westward expansion of the United States. Its strategic location along the Ohio River made it a vital center for trade, transport, and migration. As settlers pushed west, Cincinnati became known as the gateway to the West, helping to shape the story of both Ohio and the nation. Founding and early growth. Cincinnati's story began in 1788, when Matthias Denman, Colonel Robert Patterson, and Israel Ludlow chose a site on the northern bank of the Ohio River, opposite the mouth of the Licking River, to establish a settlement. The first surveyor, John Filson, called it Lasanteville, a name he pieced together from French and Latin to mean the town opposite the mouth of the Licking. But just 2 years later, on January 4, 1790, Governor Arthur St. Clair renamed the settlement Cincinnati in honor of the Society of the Cincinnati. By 1811, the introduction of steamboats on the Ohio River transformed the city's trade. With faster shipping, Cincinnati connected commercially with cities like St. Louis and New Orleans. The settlement's official incorporation as a city came on March 1, 1819. At that time, pork and hay exports turned Cincinnati into the leading center for pork processing in the region, earning it the nickname Porkopolis. Between 1810 and 1830, the city's population nearly tripled, rising from just under 10,000 to more than 24,000 residents. Transportation and expansion. Cincinnati's growth was fueled by ambitious infrastructure projects. Construction of the Miami and Erie Canal began in 1825, linking the city first to Middletown by 1827, and eventually all the way to Toledo by 1840. This waterway opened new avenues for commerce across Ohio. By the mid-1830s, railroads followed. The chartering of the Little Miami Railroad in 1836 aimed to connect Cincinnati with the Mad River and Lake Erie Railroad, giving the city direct access to Lake Erie ports and boosting its role as a transportation hub. Abolitionism and racial conflict. Cincinnati's position on the Ohio River, directly across from the slave state of Kentucky, made it a flashpoint in the fight over slavery. For many enslaved people seeking freedom, the Ohio River represented hope, and Cincinnati became a key crossing point on the Underground Railroad. Abolitionists in the city worked tirelessly, and leaders like Levi Coffin made Cincinnati central to their anti-slavery campaigns. Harriet Beecher Stowe, who lived in the city for a time, drew inspiration from escaped slaves she met there when writing Uncle Tom's Cabin. But this history was marked by tension and violence. Cincinnati also had strong pro-slavery sympathies, especially among settlers from the Upper South. Racial hostility erupted into violent riots in 1829, 1836, and 1842. The 1829 attacks forced more than 1,200 black residents to flee, many resettling in Canada. In 1836, a mob of 700 pro-slavery men destroyed black neighborhoods and targeted the press of James M. Birney, who published The Philanthropist, an anti-slavery paper. These clashes highlighted the deep divide between abolitionists and slavery supporters in Cincinnati's history, particularly after the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 inflamed national tensions. Immigration and the Queen City. Through the mid-1800s, Cincinnati faced labor shortages that were eventually filled by large waves of immigrants. By the late 1840s, Irish and German newcomers poured into the city, fueling its rapid growth. By 1850, Cincinnati's population had swelled to over 115,000. Its economic strength, cultural development, and rising prominence during this era earned it the nickname the Queen City, a title that still echoes in its identity today. Industrial development and the Gilded Age. Cincinnati's unique location along the Ohio River, bordering the Free State of Ohio and the Slave State of Kentucky, cemented its role as a critical stop on the Underground Railroad. Countless freedom seekers crossed through the city on their way north, aided by local abolitionists who made Cincinnati a hub for anti-slavery activism. This legacy was honored in 2004 with the opening of the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in downtown Cincinnati, a museum that preserves the city's role in the struggle for freedom. As the 19th century progressed, Cincinnati embraced industrial development and modern transportation. In 1859, the city established 6 horse-drawn streetcar lines, giving residents a faster and more reliable way to move through the city. By 1872, streetcars linked downtown with nearby hilltop neighborhoods, thanks in part to the Cincinnati Inclined Plane Company, which ferried passengers up to Mount Auburn. By 1889, the city converted from horse-drawn cars to electric streetcars, marking a major step toward modernization. Cincinnati also became a center for reform movements during this period. In November 1875, the city hosted the second annual meeting of the Woman's Christian Temperance Union, reflecting its place in the wider social debates of the Gilded Age. The city's industrial ambition was highlighted by the completion of the Cincinnati Southern Railway in 1880. Built to connect Cincinnati with Chattanooga, Tennessee, it was unique as the only municipally owned interstate railway in the United States for well over a century, remaining under public ownership until its sale in 2024. Yet the Gilded Age in Cincinnati was not without turmoil. In 1884, anger erupted after a manslaughter verdict was returned in what many saw as a clear case of murder. The outrage boiled over into the infamous courthouse riots, one of the most destructive urban uprisings in American history. Over 3 days of violence, 56 people were killed and more than 300 injured. The riots ended the political dominance of Republican boss Thomas C. Campbell and left a lasting mark on the city's history. 20th century Cincinnati. By the start of the 20th century, Cincinnati's population had grown to more than 325,000. The city marked the era with ambitious construction projects that reshaped its skyline and downtown core. In 1903, the Ingalls Building rose as the world's first reinforced concrete skyscraper. The 1920s and 1930s brought further renewal, including the iconic Cincinnati Union Terminal, the U.S. Courthouse and Post Office, the unfinished Cincinnati Subway, and the towering 49-story Carew Tower, which became the city's tallest building. Despite the hardships of the Great Depression, Cincinnati fared better than many cities of similar size, thanks in large part to a revival of river trade, which proved cheaper than shipping goods by rail. However, in 1937, the city faced disaster when the Ohio River experienced one of the worst floods in U.S. history, devastating neighborhoods throughout the Ohio Valley. In response, Cincinnati built protective flood walls to safeguard against future flooding. Following World War II, the city launched an ambitious master plan for urban renewal. By the 1950s, Cincinnati reached its peak population of nearly 510,000. Yet as middle-class white families moved to the suburbs, black families arriving from the South during the Great Migration settled into older neighborhoods within the city. As industrial jobs declined later in the century, poverty deepened, particularly in these communities. Racial tensions erupted into unrest. In 1967, the Avondale neighborhood experienced violent riots after years of police abuse and poor living conditions. Another riot broke out in April 1968 following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., resulting in deaths, injuries, and widespread arrests. President Lyndon B. Johnson's Commission on Civil Disorders later linked these uprisings to systemic poverty, segregation, and discriminatory policing practices. 21st century to the present. Cincinnati entered the new millennium with major investments in sports and culture. Paycor Stadium opened in 2000, followed by Great American Ballpark in 2003, both financed through a Hamilton County sales tax. But the city also faced deep challenges. In 2001, racially charged riots erupted after the police shooting of an unarmed young black man, Timothy Thomas. Out of the unrest came the historic collaborative agreement between the ACLU, Black United Front, the city, and the police union, creating a model for community-based policing later studied nationwide. In 2015, the fatal police shooting of Samuel Dubose again placed Cincinnati at the center of national debates over race, policing, and justice, drawing protests linked to the Black Lives Matter movement. At the same time, Cincinnati pursued revitalization, with gentrification transforming areas like Over the Rhine. In 2018, Major League Soccer announced FC Cincinnati as the league's newest team, cementing the city's status as a three-sport hub alongside the Reds and Bengals. The team's new home, TQL Stadium, opened in 2021 on the city's west end. The 2020 census revealed something remarkable. After decades of population decline, Cincinnati experienced growth for the first time since 1950. On January 4, 2022, Aftab Purval was sworn in as the city's 70th mayor, representing a new chapter in Cincinnati's ongoing story. Cincinnati history is rich, complex, and ever-evolving, from its role in the Underground Railroad to its modern revival as a cultural and economic center of Ohio. If you want to keep exploring stories like this, subscribe to History Love, your go-to YouTube channel for uncovering the fascinating stories of the past.